Hello everybody, and welcome back to Certified Collectibles. Today we're going to be discussing how to properly purchase vintage action figures to maximize long-term profit potential. Now, if you're a collector and you just want to pick up some figures you remember from your childhood, put them on the shelf, admire them, remember the good old days, then some of the factors we discuss in today's video, they might be good to keep in the back of your mind, but they won't be as important to you going forward. Today's video is more focused on the investor mindset, individuals looking to sell their collection at a profit in the future. So there are a couple factors we need to discuss to help you maximize your profit potential. But first we need to discuss which toy lines to actually add to your collection to begin with. Now, HeMan Master of the Universe from the 80s, this toy line is a must-have in your collection. Thundercats, toy line, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and of course the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the early 90s. Now, there's quite a few different series of all these toy lines that you need to consider. Today we're going to discuss which ones you should actually start adding to your portfolio for long-term investment potential. Some of them have already been realized. All the potential has already been realized in the certain series, so they might not have as much potential going forward. So we're going to discuss which ones you should look at. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, the HeMan Master of the Universe, this toy line is one that everyone knows, everyone is after right now. There's a lot of buzz about He-Man and Master of the Universe, especially because Kevin Smith is working on a new animated cartoon for Netflix, which is going to come out here very soon. This is November of 2020. It's supposed to come out here, I think, in November, maybe December. So it should be out this year, if not beginning of 2021. So that's going to drive a lot of interest back to Master of the Universe. There's also a live-action feature film by Sony that's going to come out maybe next year for the He-Man and Master of the Universe as well. So the He-Man, this brand, anybody that played with these toys as a kid is going to see those cartoons, those movies, remember these toys, and want to go back and pick up some toys they remember from their childhood. So these toys, super highly sought after. They always have been, but there's going to be a lot more interest on them here very soon. Over the past few years, I'd say over the past year alone, substantial increases in these toys. So this one here that you see in front of us, this here is a Series 2. This one here, probably about $200, $300 a year ago. Now it's going to be about $2,000 action figure. So super, appreciation over the past year alone, but we see these going higher in the future. So let's go ahead and get started with the series of the He-Man that we think you should focus on. Now, this is a 12 back, like I mentioned. If you turn it over, you'll see 12 characters on the back. That's why it's called a 12 back. Series 1 is an 8 back. It only has 8 characters on the back. Series 1 is the one that people used to always go after. Collectors and investors used to always focus on Series 1. That was the first. Those came out before the cartoon back in the 80s. The cartoon was actually based on the toy line. But there's certain problems with Series 1 that we need to discuss. Same thing with the Thundercats toy line. The 8-back Series 1, they're going to have the same problems as the He-Man Series 1. So the Series 2 is a 14-back for the Thundercats, 12-back for the He-Man, 14-back for the Thundercats. We think the Series 2 is the series that you should focus on for both of these toy lines, He-Man and Thundercats. Let me show you what's wrong with the Series 1. This is a Series 1 8-back Lino action figure. This is one that everyone was after. They still are. But the problem with the Series 1 action figures, back when they made these toys, no one knew how they were going to perform back in the 80s, so they made them out of the cheapest materials you possibly could. And these toys were meant to be just busted open and played with, so no one expected anybody to save these for 45 years. Because of that, these bubbles here are very cheap, and they're very brittle for the Series 1. You can't see this probably on the camera, but here, Lionel has kicked through his bubble. This action figure was actually in perfect condition when we sent it into AFA. They graded it a 60. When it came back, because of the shipping, the little action figure bounced around inside the bubble and actually kicked through the bubble, poked a hole in it. There's actually pieces of bubble floating around in the case now. That, of course, is damaging to the long-term investment potential for this particular action figure. No one wants it with a hole in it. There's a lot of them on the market with holes and cracks. The idea is to get a pristine one from Series 1, but like I said, Series 1, cheap materials often have brittle bubbles. So if you're actually buying a Series 1 action figure, just know that if you're ever looking to ship it, or you mishandle it, or if you drop it, there's a good chance that the action figure inside is going to bounce against the bubble and bust it or crack it. So it's definitely going to affect the value. Like I said, this was actually already graded by AFA. When they got it, it was actually in perfect condition. When they sent it back to us already graded, it did break inside the AFA holder. So if we go to sell this, it says it's a 60 grade, but of course, it has a hole in the bubble. Nobody's really going to want the hole in the bubble. It went from a $3,000 action figure probably down to a $1,500 action figure. So the point of all that is focus on the Series 2 toy line for HeMan and Thundercats. Series 2, there is profit potential in those series. Now, one of the key factors affecting value of any of these toy lines is the yellowing of the bubble. As you can see, HeMan right here, the bubble looks actually pretty clear. On camera, it looks even more clear than it does in person. In person, there's a teeny hue, like a tiny yellow hue to it, but you can't really see that all that well on the camera. But when AFA grades these, anything with a yellow tint is going to get a Y next to the grade. So whenever you see a AFA graded action figure with a Y next to the condition, that means it's yellowing. Now, there is a misconception on the market that if an action figure bubble starts to yellow, it's just going to keep yellowing and get worse and worse over time and eventually just be brown and you won't be able to see through it. That's not necessarily true. What makes the bubbles turn yellow to begin with is just how they were stored. Any kind of visible light is going to affect these UV lighting. Any temperature change, any moisture or humidity is going to affect these. Any kind of solvent that you try to clean it with will make these yellow over time. So if they're stored correctly, they shouldn't yellow, let's say, as much. Plastics, nobody knows how they're going to yellow or how they're going to turn. You could have kept this thing stored perfectly, climate controlled conditions, no temperature changes, no humidity changes, no light around it, and it could still yellow. Polymers, and plastics will decay over time. Nobody knows how they're going to actually go forward because they weren't meant to be stored for 45 years. That being said, just because they're yellow now doesn't mean they're going to get worse. Typically, you can get actually a UV upgrade for the AFA cases that's going to help block some of the light, but it's not going to block temperature and moisture changes. So all these action figures have to be stored correctly. Just keep that in mind when you're investing for long term, because storage will affect the appearance and the yellowing of the bubble. So the yellowing of the bubble is a main factor. This one here, like I said, not too yellow. Same thing with the Lino Thundercats action figure here. This is a Y grade, but see, you can't really see much yellowing. This is what they could look like. This is the worst case scenario here. This is one of the 8 backs for the Thundercats toy line. This is what I was talking about earlier. You do see the 8 characters here. This is one of the series 1s. But look at the bubble. You can hardly see through this. It's very yellow, almost brown. Same thing with some of the HeMan action figures. Now this is a 12-back HeMan action figure, but see, the bubble is very, not only dusty, but yellow. So the yellowing of the bubbles will affect the value. When it's this yellow, when you're looking to actually invest in these long term, if they're this shade of yellow and you're able to actually get them in encased UV protected cases from AFA, it should help protect them. Now, it's important to remember that all these action figures, the value on the market there is relative to other counterparts on the market. So there is no specified price for a HeMan 70 grade action figure. It is based on its relative counterparts on the market. If every action figure on the market has a Y grade, a yellowing grade, that means every one on the market is yellowing, then of course you just want to go for the highest grade, let's say an 85, 90, whatever the highest grade is for that action figure, and the Y for the yellowing isn't going to be all that important. Now, if a clear bubble comes out, it's going to go for well over what the yellow bubbles go for, of course. Everybody wants a clear bubble, but if you're actually investing for long term, don't turn away from the bubbles just because they're yellowing. Make sure you're picking the clearest of the yellow colored bubbles, but doesn't mean they're going to keep yellowing and get worse and worse over time. If they're stored properly, they should kind of maintain the same hue of yellow. But you don't want to get a super dark ones. Nobody wants those. Nobody's going to buy those in the future. But if every bubble is yellow, everything on the market is yellowing, these values are relative to their counterparts. So keep that in mind when you're investing for long term. Keep that in mind when you go to sell. Do not discount your item just because it has a slight yellow bubble. Make sure you know the value on the market for those items. Now, what you have to be on the lookout for if you're actually buying these raw and looking to grade them yourself and add to your collection are recards. Now, recarded action figures are becoming much more popular because of the yellowing bubbles. A lot of collectors don't want the yellow bubbles, so they're paying to get the figures recarded. This here is a actual bubble from the time period, so it is a slightly yellowed, but if you look around the glue of the bubble on the card, it has been reapplied. AFA will not grade this. We actually sent this into AFA because we did not catch it at the time. So this came back as a recard, ungradable. This has only the value of the figure inside. It is, if a collector wants to add this and put it on the shelf as part of their collection, it's not going to be valued any more than the character inside. So if the character inside is mint condition, this whole piece will be valued on the mint condition character, not on the package. The fact that it's sealed, because it's not. It is a recard. So keep an eye out for recards. Recards will destroy value of these figures. If you, like I said, if you're a collector and you just want to add a really pristine example to your collection, put it on the shelf, remember your childhood, remember how you pulled that off the shelf at the toy store and played with it, then that's a different story. That's just for your own enjoyment. This, like I said, this video is focused on long-term investments and investment potential. So recards, not good for long-term investment potential. Another factor, and this is one that's going to apply more to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line, is the fact that a lot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toys, the cards are not punched. You see here the hanger tabs. These were meant to hang on the store shelves. So a lot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, by the time this toy line came out in the 90s, people were already starting to collect the toys. So there's going to be a lot of these that come nice. A lot of these were stored well. A lot of these people really hoarded. So you're going to find a lot of mint condition Ninja Turtles. So you definitely want to stay high grade with these. You definitely want to stay clear bubbles with the turtles. And the punched or unpunched, the market hasn't really shown which way to go yet on that. The unpunched may be worth more later, or maybe it's the punched. If you compare it to the video games, a lot of the water certified video games with hang tabs sell for a lot more because those were actually on store shelves and they were purchased off store shelves and kept pristine. The ones that are unpunched actually just came right out of the box. Like I said, some people collected cases of these back in the 90s, so they're just box fresh. That's the unpunched. They were never on the store hangers. They may have been in the store, on the store shelves, just laid flat, but they weren't in store hangers. So who's to say which is going to be more valuable in the future? Right now, it's going to be personal preference. We typically have been buying the turtles with the unpunched cards, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be more profit potential for the unpunched over the punched. Get the highest grade you can, the clearest bubble you can, punched or unpunched. Something to keep in mind, something to remember, but not really a deciding factor on value right now. Now, like I mentioned before, the prices of all these action figures are going to be relative to their counterparts on the market. So if everything on the market is a grade 70 or lower and everything is yellowing, keep that in mind when you're looking to pick these up for long-term investment. If there isn't a pristine 85 or 90 clear bubbled action figure, don't pass up your opportunity to pick up some of these. Like I said, just because the bubble is yellowing doesn't mean it'll continue to yellow. Just because it's a 70 doesn't mean that's a low grade. It might be the highest grade on the market. There are some very rare figures, especially for the HeMan and the Thundercats, go for substantial amounts, but they're not good grades. Some of these you'll never see over a 60, but that's the highest grade that exists. So don't pass up just because the grades aren't as high as you would like them to be. Make sure you see the relative values of the other action figures on the market and make your decision that way. So those are our pointers that we think you should consider when investing in the action figure toy lines for the long-term investment potential. And like I said, if you're a collector, collecting for your own enjoyment, that's a much different story. Please let us know what you think of our video in the comment section below. Give us a thumbs up. And as always, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thank you for joining us here at Certified Collectibles, and we'll see you again next time.